Since last fall, hog producer margins have fallen substantially, challenging the pork sector. And as profits dive, producers could look to herd liquidation to absorb some of the shockwaves. According to Iowa State University, the average return for producers in the first quarter of 2023 was a loss of $34 per head, the largest decline in producer profitability in a decade. Holly Cook, staff economist with the National Pork Producers Council, says the reduction was more so related to rising costs than hog prices.
So certainly very difficult times in the industry, different than other periods of loss in that hog prices are similar to the 5-year average level. This summer, they've come up from where they were a few months ago. But like I said, with very high cost of production, that's really what's put us in the situation that we're in right now.
As a result, pig producers, especially large players, have reduced their sow herds at increasing rates. Showing up in headlines over the last year was Smithfield Foods shuttering its pork facility in Vernon, California in June 2022, citing higher operation costs. Almost a year later, Smithfield announced its employees that it would shut down 37 hog farms in Missouri starting in May. The pork giant's scale back in operations could be seen as a part of a broader trend in the industry. The USDA's quarterly hogs and pigs report in June showed that the second quarter breeding herd totaled 6.15 million head, down slightly from the previous year. However, the number of sows that farrowed in March through May was down 2% from last year at 2.896 million head, the lowest since the second quarter of 2015. A little less gloomy section of the report was a surprise increase in pigs saved per litter, a sign that livestock extension economist with Iowa State University, Lee Scholes, says a positive is terms of sow productivity.
You know, as I started to dig into the data, I think what matches what I've seen in the breeding herd and especially the pigs saved per litter, which that was probably the biggest surprise, right? We went up to 3.3% increase in pigs saved per litter is, you know, I think where we've seen some of the reduction in the sow herd, you've also seen an increase in pigs saved per litter. So what that tells me is, you know, we may be culling the least productive sows. There may be some gilts coming in behind them, right? So we haven't seen a big change in that breeding herd, but the breeding herd that is there is much more productive.
Cook says that while there is evidence of liquidation, more data may be needed to determine a clear trend for supplies.
You know, we can look at the inventory numbers. Even since June 1, sow slaughter has been up about 9% compared to the same period a year ago. And so those are numbers that we'll need to watch really closely to see what's happening and if that sow slaughter is something that's sustained over a long period of time. Depending on what percentage of the breeding herd it's accounting for, that can tell us if we're really moving into some serious liquidation.
With high production costs digging into margins, producers are looking to demand to help keep prices stable. Domestic demand for U.S. pork has trailed off compared to a year ago levels. First quarter wholesale prices saw that effect in the first quarter before recovering substantially since May. Scholes says that current appetite for pork is still something not to be too disappointed about. He says demand currently sits only below a year ago level as higher consumer income from COVID-19 stimulus helped drive demand coming out of the pandemic. Looking overseas, export demand for the pork industry is a highlight.
The data I follow is the weekly data out of the Foreign Ag Service, because that's the most up-to-date data. So we have it through June 22nd, and that shows us year-to-date total commitments. We're up 12% over last year. That's a huge surprise, right? When you were thinking about forecasts that were made in late 2022 and early 2023, they were calling for at best at par pork exports.
Moving forward, another question mark for the industry is the California's Proposition 12. Uncertainty remains over the pork market after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Prop 12 is constitutional. The law, which bans the sale of pork from producers that does not meet its requirements, officially went into effect on July 1st. However, a California judge also ruled that all pork that had entered the supply chain by July 1st could be sold in California until January 1st of 2024. Scholes says that there is no question that there will be an extra cost to the producer as a result of the law, but he says that if consumers don't pay those higher prices and consume less pork, producers will ultimately pay those higher costs. Scholes says that there is concern with new investments in facilities that meet California's requirements. He says the premiums received by producers through higher consumer prices will have to be incurred through the lifespan of those new facilities, which could be about 15 to 20 years.
And that's a concern I have is, we may see some larger premiums at the onset to get more production up to be compliant with Prop 12 and the production that they need. But do those premiums remain over the life of those investments? And that's the challenge.
Despite much uncertainty regarding the pig industry, there is a bright spot to keep producers optimistic.
I would say it's definitely positive from an overall industry perspective to see, even just seeing that increase in pigs per litter may indicate, and other reports indicate as well, that we may have overcome some of the domestic disease challenges that we've had in recent years. And so getting back to, improvements on animal health is positive.
And Scholes expressed similar optimism.
And, to remind folks, long run economics or profits are zero. You highlighted that, Dawson. But that means that just as bad of times we're having now, you have to offset that with better times, right? So those better times are behind us, right? And that's helping us through some of these times. But that means we're going to see better times ahead.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dawson Schmidt, and this has been a special report by Trader PhD.